Let's start here. During a lengthy briefing in Sandton yesterday, MK party leader Jacob Zuma discussed a number of issues, including the formation of a government of national unity. He described this partnership as a white-led, unholy alliance between the ANC and the DA. Let's try and make sense of yesterday's briefing for you this Monday. Bring in analyst Dr Fikile Vilakazi, who's the director of the Gender Equality Unit with the University of the Western Cape, joining us via our video link. Dr Vilakazi, lovely to see you as always. Thanks very much indeed for making time to speak to us here on the SABC. You know, many who waited for hours for that briefing had hoped to get a sense of what the political strategy of the MK party is, given the fact that they missed out on that first sitting of the National Assembly through their own doing, of course. And I wonder if that question has largely been answered. Do you have a sense of what the kind of game plan, politically speaking, is?
Good morning, Ayanda, and to viewers at home. To be honest with you, I think in the briefing itself, the issue of the manifesto and the program of Umkhonto weSizwe was not necessarily outlined clearly, except, of course, what has been confirmed is that they are taking up the seats of the opposition in parliament, and their task mainly being indicated as that of challenging the elections. I think they said that they will continue to contest the elections as they stand because they firmly believe that the elections have been rigged. And they also indicated something to the effect of economic freedom for the black child. I mean, they kept on emphasizing, for instance, how the current government of national unity is a unit that is compromising the needs of the black majority and favors the market. So it seems to me that that is pretty much what their agenda seems to be. They haven't necessarily spoken to their manifesto. I mean, if you read their manifesto, Ayanda and viewers at home, you would know that some of the things that they allude to are questions around bringing back the land, without compensation. So those are some of the things, but I think what was clear in my listening of the briefing yesterday, it was really just the anger also about the manner in which the president of the MK was treated by the judicial system in the country. In his own words, former President Jacob Zuma keeps on going back to the fact that he has been arrested without trial in the country. And then they also mentioned, of course, the dissatisfaction of the 26 political parties, taking us back again to the question of rigging of elections and fairness. So it seems to me like that those are the things that came out. But I think if someone was to ask clearly, what is the agenda of Umkhonto weSizwe, what is the program that they have for the nation, that is not at this point articulated clearly, at least from my reading of the situation.
Yeah, and I think many people will agree with you. I watched that briefing too, by the way, hoping to get a better sense of what the plan to get into government actually is. And what shouldn't be lost to us, of course, is that this is an organization that had 2.5 million votes. It had 45% of the vote in KwaZulu-Natal alone, and in fact, quite a showing in a number of other provinces too. And despite all of that, it doesn't seem there's going to be a single person from the organization that's going to be part of the 7th administration, either at a provincial level and at a national level. The obvious question that comes up is whether or not the MK party has genuinely missed out here on an opportunity to be heard in some of those rooms, given just how much support they got at the elections.
Ayanda, you know, my argument at this point where we are is that the opposition party in its entirety shouldn't miss the opportunity to participate decisively in this broad coalition. I'm also very skeptical to call it a government of national unity at this point, but to participate in a manner that is meaningful to the citizen and to the voter that voted them. And I imagine that the kind of opposition that we want to see in the next 5 years in Parliament is not just mudslinging, right? I think agitation is necessary, but you also want to see an opposition that is now folding its sleeves and putting its hands where the action is needed on service delivery. So they should be arguing for things like inclusion in terms of, being seen in the executive of the country, leading certain ministries and so on. So I would propose even to the president, because it's his prerogative, in fact, as he is imagining an inclusive cabinet, as we are told, to think very seriously about that. I mean, the ANC keeps on saying that the government of national unity is still open to the opposition. The MK and the EFF, Al-Jama and the Progressive Alliance, basically, may need to regroup itself and strategize in terms of what are the best ways of acting as an opposition in this invitation. And my suggestion would be that let it be not just a positionality of mudslinging and agitation only, but let them consider an option that says, how can we best maximize this moment so that we contribute towards service delivery to the people of South Africa as the opposition? And I think the room exists there. If you look at the history of governance from the opposition, look at Good. Good has run a ministry in South Africa. Look at Azapo. We had Umangena as a Minister of Education at some point, and many others. So I think that they need to be agitating for those kinds of positions to say, do not leave us out of the executive. You may leave us out of the GNU, which is a coalition of the three parties, but we want to lead where we can deliver for our people. And in my view, then, that would probably bring us closer to some kind of a notion of a government of national unity, even if a political party had 1%, for instance, like Rise Mzansi. Give Rise Mzansi a ministry so that Rise Mzansi is able to deliver for its constituents.
Yeah.
Give the EFF ministries, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, if the weekend papers are anything to go by, apparently the Good Party may very well be back in the executive. We know that Patricia de Lille, of course, headed up a number of ministries in the previous administration, ending up in tourism. So it seems even with her one seat, the Good Party might very well be able to sneak in back into cabinet. But for example, the line of questioning I'm using here is one that keeps the voter of the MK Party in mind. I mean, this is an organization that made a whole host of promises, as did everybody else who was campaigning during this election season. And despite the significant mandates that the MK Party did receive, there are real concerns, even anecdotally from people who did vote for the organization, that much of that doesn't seem to amount to much outside of, I suppose, hopefully being able, as you mentioned, to put up a real fight in the opposition benches, even though, and this is important, I think, even though there was an opportunity, it seemed, to be in government.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, if you look at KwaZulu-Natal, for instance, this is a political party that has the majority in KwaZulu-Natal. And I think those are really genuine questions where those who voted the MK are saying we were hoping to be led by Umkhonto weSizwe in KwaZulu-Natal, and then what happened, So I think it's a lost opportunity to a certain extent, and one looks into a situation, Ayanda, you're not really able to pinpoint into why is it that the MK was not able to rise into a space of the executive governance, particularly because we know that Umkhonto weSizwe is largely formed by members of the ANC who were disgruntled. So these are cadres who are not new in politics. These are cadres who have been there, who have done it in different ways. I mean, these are former mayors, these are former councillors in the different jurisdictions. So they understand the dance of politics. Why is it that they did not rise into that and respect at least the voter, or give the voter satisfaction to say, we have put you into some kind of position to lead, so you need to be able to lead with. And I think that's a lost opportunity that they were not able to galvanize, because if they had that meeting with Inkatha Freedom Party, I heard anyway that they were saying that Inkatha is lying about the fact that they waited for them. Be that as it may, they needed to maximize that opportunity. In KwaZulu-Natal, I contest that they could have won Inkatha Freedom Party to their favor and govern KwaZulu-Natal. And I think the tactic then that they're utilizing as Umkhonto weSizwe would need to look at those glitches and close those gaps, even as they are deciding to take their seats in the National Assembly. They stand an opportunity here to galvanize perhaps the progressive left, towards that particular position. And I still believe, I may be lying here, I may be wrong, but I still believe that they can still win Umkhonto weSizwe, Inkatha Freedom Party, perhaps even the ANC. This is politics. I talk about a continuum in politics. A continuum is a space where there's a dance back and forth in negotiations. And I think Umkhonto weSizwe here has an opportunity to strengthen its muscle around negotiation, including other opposition parties. They may win the ANC back. They may win the IFP back if their concern is really the DA. But they need to be able to convince in a manner that is able to show deliberate service delivery options for the citizen more than just mudslinging. I think that for me is a very important factor, and it may even satisfy the voter that has put them into power.
Yeah, in that continuum that you speak of in politics, I wonder how much of it comes with a fair amount of instability. You know, we had an opportunity to speak to Tamin Ntuli, the Premier-elect of KwaZulu-Natal, this morning. First question I posed to him was the extent to which he reckons this coalition will be able to coalesce, given the fact that the biggest party in the province is out of government. He obviously is putting up a brave front, reckoning that they will be able to do that. But I think many people do subscribe to the idea of there being a whole lot more fluidity than not. So are you anticipating, as you factor in this continuum, instability in KwaZulu-Natal until we find some kind of equilibrium where we don't have a situation where the biggest party, for example, in the province is not in government?
I do foresee that, we may have those elements of instability. I mean, but I think it will be a kind of instability that is contained. If you look at the history of coalitions in KwaZulu-Natal, KwaZulu-Natal is a province that is not new to coalitions, by the way. Since 1994, KwaZulu-Natal municipalities and districts have been in some form of coalition with the ANC and with the DA, and with two of them both put in one, with the EFF even. And we have a system that is different from other provinces in KwaZulu-Natal, which is a system where, for instance, when a mayor, when a premier appoints the legislature, for instance, and this vote of no confidence come into effect, and let's say, for example, the premier is voted out of confidence. The system that we have in KwaZulu-Natal enables the executive to continue to function comparatively to other jurisdictions. When you unseat a premier, even at national level, when you unseat a president, the president has got to go away with his whole cabinet and the premier as well. But what is likely to then perhaps contribute to some kind of sustainable instability, for lack of a better word, in KwaZulu-Natal is because of that system, which then can be maximized by political parties because it is not dependent on the premier. The premier can come in this fluidity of negotiation from any political party. For as long as the executive is intact, the MECs and so on are intact in their responsibilities, we are likely to see, yes, some kind of shifts, but they may not necessarily contribute towards instability if those negotiations are communicated timeously to the voter, to the public, and the agreements and disagreements that are being made are made public constantly. But what is important is that as that dance is happening and that fluidity is happening, service delivery is not compromised. So MECs are becoming key here. And that is the uniqueness of KZN in that as MK and IFP and ANC and DA negotiate themselves in and out of coalition governance, particularly at the executive level, we may find that we may not necessarily feel the level of instability like we can feel in Gauteng and Tswana, for instance, even at national level. So that is an advantage of KZN, which I think still Umkhonto weSizwe has room then to renegotiate itself into this continuum, into this fluidity, and then it gives us a chance to say, couple of months down the line, we may be in a different place in the continuum.
Sure.
But the voter has to travel with the political party in this journey of fluidity, so that we understand that there's a particular threshold that I argue for here, Ayanda, which I call a buffer zone. That threshold demands that each political party in this negotiation in and out has got to realize that you're not going to get 100% of your ideological standpoint, right? You may need to say, I'm willing to trade off 25% of who we are. And not be stubborn and humble myself, not all of it. And then in that way, also negotiate that with the voter to say we were not able to get the full land without compensation, but maybe we are asking, instead of giving them 100% compensation, we'll give them only 5%. Those kinds of things. Those are the negotiations that we're expecting to happen at the level of political parties. But I anticipate KwaZulu-Natal may not necessarily then experience hard instability because of the system that we have in place.
All right, Dr. Fikile Vilakazi, so much else was said in that briefing, of course, but I suppose we'll take it via piecemeal as we continue making sense of the ever-evolving political landscape in the country. But for now, thanks very much indeed for sharing your insights. We appreciate your time, Dr. Fikile Vilakazi, speaking to us there, of course, as a political analyst.